Hi, Anna here, and I am going to read you a story. So, lately we've had rain one day, and then sunshine the next, and then wind the next day, and then the ground was really soft. And my neighbor had this giant oak tree that was at least 80 years old, and it fell over right in his yard, and it hit his house this much. They had like six shingles to replace and part of the gutter, and no windows were broken, and none of the bricks came loose. And it was perfectly magical that it didn't crush the house, but it went right in between his house and the neighbor's house, right in between, whoosh, like a puzzle piece. So we spent 2 days sawing up that tree and taking away the limbs and watching the weather. And it's been raining and then windy and then sunny and then raining and then windy and then sunny because it's spring and that's what happens here. And so every morning we say, well, what's the weather going to be like? And this book is called Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs. If you have this book, hit pause and then go get the book. Put it in your lap. Open to page 1 and hit play. And then we will read it together. Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs, written by Judy Barrett and drawn by Ron Barrett. Excuse me, I was going to say red because it was a red square and my tongue got all confused. Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs. I haven't read this book in a very long time, so I'm going to try to read it without mistakes, but if I make a mistake, just kind of say, Anna, geez, I forgive you. Okay, ready? Here we go. We were all sitting around the big kitchen table. It was Saturday morning, pancake morning. Mom was squeezing oranges for juice. Henry and I were betting on how many pancakes we could eat. And Grandpa was doing the flippin'. He even has his tongue out like this, like he's really concentrating. My sister, Darlene, has a husband named Paul, and Paul flips pancakes and concentrates very hard, but I'm not sure if he sticks out his tongue. Some of you might call Paul Grandpa. In fact, I know some of you do. Seconds later, something flew through the air and headed toward the kitchen ceiling and landed right on Henry. After we realized that the flying object was only a pancake, we all laughed, even Grandpa, and breakfast continued quite uneventfully. All the other pancakes landed in the pan. All of them were eaten, even the one that landed on Henry. Do you think Henry ate it, or do you think he made his sister eat it? That night, touched off by the pancake incident at breakfast, Grandpa told us the best tall tale bedtime story he'd ever told. Across an ocean, over lots of huge bumpy mountains, across 3 hot deserts and 1 smaller ocean, there lay the tiny town of Chewin' In most ways, it was very much like any other tiny town. It had a main street lined with stores and houses with streets and gardens around them, a schoolhouse, about 300 people, and some assorted cats and dogs. But there were no food stores in the town of Chewin'. They didn't need any. The sky supplied all the food they could possibly want. The only thing that was really different about Chewin' was its weather. It came 3 times a day, at breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Everything that everyone ate came from the sky. Can you imagine that? Not going to the grocery store and just going outside and waiting for things to fall that you could eat? Looks kind of fun. Whatever the weather served, that's what they ate that day. But it never rained rain, and it never snowed snow, and it never blew just wind. It rained things like soup and juice. It snowed mashed potatoes and green peas, and sometimes the wind blew in storms of hamburgers. These look like big storm clouds. The people could watch the weather report on television in the morning, and they would even hear a prediction for the next day's food. When the townspeople went outside, they carried their plates and cups and glasses and forks and knives and spoons. That way they would always be prepared for any kind of weather. If there were leftovers, and there usually were, the people took them home and put them in their refrigerators in case they got hungry between meals. I think this is my favorite one. It's raining tomato soup, it looks like. Or maybe orange juice. And this little boy is drinking from a straw out of an umbrella, and the dog has a bowl on his head. The dog's name is Spike, and he's also collecting things to eat. That's pretty funny. This lady's chasing a chicken leg. This whole car is covered with pancakes. And then on this weather report, it says cloudy with a chance of meatballs. This is funny. The menu varied. By the time they woke up in the morning, breakfast was coming down. After a brief shower of orange juice, low clouds of sunny-side-up eggs moved in, followed by pieces of toast. Butter and jelly sprinkled down for the toast. And most of the time it rained milk afterwards. For lunch one day, frankfurters, already in their rolls, blew in from the northwest in about 5 miles an hour. There were mustard clouds nearby, and the wind shifted to the east and brought in some baked beans. A drizzle of soda finished off the meal. We're actually having hot dogs and hamburgers for dinner tonight because it's sunny and not raining or winding. So we are going to have frankfurters, hot dogs, but they are not going to come from the sky. My Cadence just got here. Show him what you have. She has strawberries from the farm next door. We're reading Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs. Did you know that no strawberries fall from the sky in this book?
Yeah.
You did?
Yeah.
Have I read this book to you before?
Yeah.
Yeah. She's right. She's a little camera shy, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, so where were we? I think we were at frankfurters falling at 5 miles an hour. Okay. Dinner one night consisted of lamb chops, becoming heavy at times with occasional ketchup. Periods of peas and baked potatoes were followed by gradual clearing with a wonderful jello setting in the west. So this is supposed to be like the sunset. Jello. The sanitation department of Chew and Swallow had rather an unusual job for sanitation department. It had to remove the food that fell on the houses and sidewalks and lawns. The co-workers cleaned things up after every meal and fed all the dogs and cats. Then they emptied some of it into the surrounding oceans for the fish and turtles and whales to eat. The rest of the food was put back onto the earth so that the soil would be richer for the people's flower gardens. Life for the townspeople was delicious until the weather took a turn for the worse. Spaghetti ties up town. One day there was nothing but gorgonzola cheese all day long. Gorgonzola cheese stinks. The next day there was only broccoli, all overcooked. Overcooked broccoli stinks too. And the next day there were Brussels sprouts and peanut butter with mayonnaise. I like peanut butter with mayonnaise. Another day there was pea soup fog, and no one could see where they were going, and they could barely find the rest of the meal that got stuck in the fog. A little bit of fish, a little bit of spoons and forks, and I think that's a duck. I'm not really sure what the duck is doing. The food was getting larger and larger, and so were the portions. The people were getting frightened. Violent storms blew up frequently, and awful things were happening. On Tuesday, there was a hurricane of bread and rolls all day long and into the night. There were soft rolls and hard rolls, and some without seeds, and some with seeds. There was white bread and rye bread and whole wheat toast. Most of it was larger than they'd ever had before. It was a terrible day. Everyone had to stay indoors. Roofs were damaged, and the sanitation department was beside itself. The mess took the workers 4 days to clean up, and the sea was full of floating rolls. To help out, the people piled up as much of the bread as they could in their backyards, and the birds picked at it a bit. It just stayed there and got taller and staler and staler. There was a storm of pancakes one morning, and a downpour of maple syrup that nearly flooded the town. A huge pancake covered the school, and no one could get it off because of its weight. So they had to close the school. Lunch one day brought 15-inch drifts of cream cheese and jelly sandwiches. Everyone ate themselves sick, and the day ended with a stomachache. There was an awful salt and pepper wind, accompanied by an even worse tomato tornado, and people were sneezing themselves silly and running around to avoid the tomatoes. The town was a mess. There were seeds and pulp everywhere. The sanitation department gave up. The job was too big. Everyone feared for their lives. They couldn't go outside most of the time. Many houses had been badly damaged by giant meatballs. Stores were boarded up, and there was no more school for the children. So a decision was made to abandon the town of Chew and Swallow. It was a matter of survival. The people glued together a giant piece of stale bread, sandwich style, with peanut butter. Let me make sure I didn't miss a page. No, that's it. The people glued together the giant pieces of stale bread, sandwich style, with peanut butter. They took absolute necessities with them and set sail on their rafts for a new land. Their necessities include the dog, of course. And after being afloat for a week, they finally reached a small coastal town which welcomed them. The bread held up surprisingly well enough for them to build temporary houses for themselves out of it. The children began school again, and the adults all tried to find places for themselves in the new land. The biggest change they had to make was getting used to buying food at the supermarket. They found it odd that the food was kept on shelves and packaged in boxes and cans and bottles. Meat that had to be cooked was kept in large refrigerators, and nothing came down from the sky except for rain and snow. The clouds above their heads were not made of fried eggs, and no one ever got hit by a hamburger again. And nobody dared to go back to Chew and Swallow to find out what had happened to it. They were too afraid. Henry and I were awake. Excuse me. Henry and I were awake until the very end of Grandpa's story. I remember his goodnight kiss. And the next morning we woke up to see snow falling outside our window, and we ran downstairs for breakfast and ate it a little faster than usual so we could go sledding with Grandpa. It's funny, but even as we were sliding down the hill, we thought we saw a giant pat of butter on top, and we could almost smell the mashed potatoes. Does that look like a big hill of mashed potatoes with butter on it? The end. You know, right now, there was a lot of similarities between right now and this book because we can't go to school right now. And the weather's doing all kinds of crazy things right now because it's spring. And, you know, the parents are all wondering what to do with themselves because some of us can't go to work. And this one with the spaghetti ties up the town. I sometimes feel like our town is a little tied up, but I look for all the things that I can do, like read books to you and play with my dogs and plant things in my garden and go for bike rides and go for rides in the car and do scavenger hunts. And somehow it makes it not seem so bad. So I hope you can find something to do. I hope to see you again, even though I can't. And please visit again soon. Hopefully you will. Thanks for joining me.